Hello and welcome back to Root to Resilience, the podcast that nourishes your mind, body, and soul and helps you cultivate strength, growth, and balance in every area of your life. I'm your host, Anupa, and I'm so glad you're here with me. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. In the last two episodes, we've explored some powerful truths about ourselves. We've talked about how we often carry outdated beliefs and behaviors, ones that keep us stuck or out of alignment with who we truly are and just truly do not serve us. I hope those episodes helped you feel more liberated, more authentic, and more open to living life on your own terms. But here's the thing, guys, awareness is just the beginning. So once we shine that light on the old beliefs holding us back, the real question becomes, what now and how do we move forward? And this is where daily practices and consistent action come into play. Today I want to share what's helped me build resilience, how consistency has been a game changer, and why doing what you said you would do, so basically honoring yourself, can transform your relationship with yourself and others and the world. So let's dive in, and I'm so excited to have this conversation today. Let's start with the question. What does resilience mean to you? I think everybody has a different definition of resilience, and I think that's quite interesting because for me, it means showing up for yourself, having self-trust, and being consistent. And this, as I mentioned earlier, has been a game changer for me. But I think often people can think of resilience as being perfect or never failing or never making mistakes. And I disagree with that. I think it's about showing up for yourself every single day. And it doesn't have to be big ways. It could be small ways, small, meaningful ways of showing up for yourself. And resilience is about doing what you said you would do and honoring your word, even when no one's watching. And I think that's the most key thing here. You're doing it for yourself. This is a relationship that you're building with yourself. So even if no one is watching, self-respect is so, so important. And this is what we're going to be diving in today. Just making sure that now that we're aware of being our authentic selves and, dropping those old limiting beliefs, let's build some trust with ourselves and let's build that resilience. And I think this is a bit of an interesting one as well because, we work really hard not to let others down, when we're in a work situation, when we're in our friend situation, in a romantic relationship situation. We're so worried about letting others down. And I think that's a good thing. We don't want to let others down. But why is it that it's so easy to let ourselves down? Often we can put somebody else before ourselves. And I just think that the relationship you have with yourself is a foundation for everything. So why not put you first? And I think that we often think that this is a selfish act, putting ourselves first, but it's not. It's all about making sure that you fill your own cup. And when you fill your own cup, you're overflowing for other people. And then when you are there for other people, it means you are there because you have enough energy for them, and it's not with resent or not with an energy where you're drained and you're feeling like you're being asked to do something that you haven't got the capacity to give. And I think this is one of the things that I really want people to think about. When you're not doing what you said you were going to do for yourself and then you're doing things for other people, what energy are you doing it with? Because it means that you are running on empty. And it's like a car. Think about a car. If you're not going to fill up a car with petrol, it's not going to be able to run, right? So it's such a simple concept. So when you're honoring your word and you're showing up consistently for yourself and you're building trust with yourself, that is what fuels resilience. And if you have that resilience and you're honoring yourself, then think about how you would show up for others. And yeah, it's just such a simple concept, but yet it's something that we find hard and difficult to do. We always tend to put others first. One of the reasons why I started off my Route to Resilience podcast by asking you all to be your authentic selves, because when you connect to your why and your purpose and who you really are, that's the biggest fuel for your resilience, because it means that you're connecting to something that makes you feel purposeful, fulfilled, meaningful, and then everything you do in your day, your daily habits, is connected to something bigger. And this is why I wanted everybody to think about authenticity and dropping those old beliefs, because it's so, so important to be able to say that this is what matters to me and this is how I'm going to live my life. And I'm going to give you an example from some of you might have read this book, A Man's Search for Meaning. It's about Viktor Frankl, who was a neurologist, a psychiatrist, and he was a Holocaust survivor. And in the book, he describes how having a deep sense of purpose and, being connected to his why helped him and other people survive in those atrocious and unthinkable conditions in the Holocaust. Viktor Frankl, his memoir and his book, it still remains one of the most influential work on human resilience. So, I mean, for my Route to Resilience podcast, I should definitely talk about this a little bit more. He suffered so much in the concentration camps. He lost his wife, his parents, his brother. And yet, despite all of those horrors that he faced, he still was able to observe with himself and others something profound, which was that those that survived the longest, they weren't necessarily physically the strongest, but they had a deep reason to keep going, a purpose, a why. And I think that this is something that I want to elaborate a little bit more, because he said that people who held on to a sense of purpose, whether it was reuniting with a loved one, finishing a creative project, or contributing to the world in some way or other, they were the ones that were able to endure even the most unbearable circumstances. So this is how powerful your purpose and why is to your survival. It gives your life so much meaning, and we should all have this why, and we should all seek this why. It's not about being in survival mode. Let's live rather than survive. In one of his most famous quotes, he says that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. So this is really quite deep. I think that sometimes we are almost quite disconnected, and we can get caught up in things that don't matter. But once we connect to our why, everything kind of falls into place around that. It's kind of the core of our being, I guess, is what Viktor Frankl is saying. And this insight is crucial when we talk about resilience, because we can often associate resilience with willpower, grit, or self-discipline. But Franklin is reminding us that resilience isn't just about forcing yourself to push through. It's about anchoring yourself to your meaning. This is actually a really big conversation that I'm having right now, and I didn't really plan on it, but I just thought that we should talk about Viktor Frankl way more than I already have. So if you're trying to build healthier habits, break free from old patterns, or navigate life's challenges, maybe discipline alone isn't enough. Maybe you need to connect with your why and with something that deeply resonates with you and makes the struggle worthwhile, because we can never eliminate that struggle. We're always going to have pain in life. It's something that we're never going to be able to avoid, unfortunately. But one thing that we don't have to do is suffer. So I think there's a really, from one of my coaches, she always used to say, pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional. And I truly do believe that. yeah, pain's always going to be there, but do you have to suffer? Probably not. So I think let's just take a moment to think about our hardships, and let's compare that to Viktor Franklin's hardship in the Holocaust, and if he can say that connecting to his why and having a deeper reason to survive and reminding himself of his purpose meant that he survived such a tragic time when so many others were passing, then I think this is quite a big lesson to learn, isn't it? I mean, isn't that hard hitting that from his observations, the people that survived those conditions were the ones that were so connected to why they were living and what their purpose was in life, that it didn't matter what was happening in their external. It didn't matter about how they were going to survive. It was more, this is my why and this is why I need to live. And I think that's quite profound if we think about it. And we think that we all get so caught up about how are we going to manage this? How are we going to do that? I mean, if you are so connected to your why, I think it just flows, and energetically, you're just rewarded with the how, and it just comes to you. And I've had examples of this as well. At first, when I was trying to think of what next with my career, I was so fixated on the how, and it was such a block for me. When I just started to connect to my why and what it is I wanted to do and how I wanted to serve others, the ideas just flowed to me. And I think this is I'm obviously not as profound as Viktor Franklin, but this is my example of how my why worked for me. It's funny to think though, because I bet a lot of you listening now are probably thinking, how do I connect to my why? It's not an easy thing to do because it's not something that we've been taught. Connecting to your why, it doesn't come easily and it takes some practice. So making those powerful tiny shifts and staying aware, actually the way to do it is fairly simple. It's your breath is so important in staying connected and connected to yourself. So before we go any further, let's do something simple. Just take a deep and slow breath, and then just take a breath out. And you might not feel it straight away, maybe because I'm talking as well. But try this once you stop listening to our podcast. Just take a breath, a slow and deep breath in, and then out. And that is all it takes sometimes to come back to yourself. We can get so caught up in the day-to-day and what's going on around us. Just take that moment for yourself. That is how easy it is to be connected to yourself. And I think that we can get, like I said, we can get so caught up in listening to that frantic, panicky, anxious mind. But when we slow down and we breathe, we hear our intuitive mind. And the thing about intuition, is that it's not as loud as that anxious, panicky mind. And that's why it so often is overlooked. It's softer and it's calmer and it's a lot harder to hear. So if you do hear that soft, calm intuitive mind, that soft, calm voice, that's the one that you should be listening to, not the one that's loudest. Now, I learnt this really simple technique from someone called Sonia Choquette. I think that's how you say her name. And she teaches that your breath is your gateway to your intuition. So if you're ever feeling overwhelmed or disconnected, just breathe in, place your hand on your heart, and ask yourself, what do you really need right now? And this really simple technique has really helped me a lot of the time, sort of when I'm fixated on that how that I told you about, when I'm fixated on how am I going to do this, and got panicky and anxious about not knowing what steps to take. I've kind of just thought, do you know what, I'm going to slow down a little bit, because obviously my mind's racing, this isn't serving me, it's not helping me, And then when I've taken a breath and asked myself, so what is it that I need right now? It's so insane because the answer comes pretty much straight away. And I've done this in my coaching sessions with people, and it's not taken them long to say this is what came to my mind. It comes straight away. So give it a practice. There are some practical ways to stay aware in daily life, and a lot of them involve slowing down. Daily check-ins like asking yourself, how are you feeling? Taking that deep breath in and out, and taking time to notice any kind of reoccurring emotional triggers or behaviors. We often run patterns, and when you start becoming aware, you will notice them. You will notice, this is another pattern that I'm running. And if something is triggering you, just use the 10-second pause before reacting. You don't have to respond straight away. So take that minute, respond with intention and not impulse. When you do feel yourself getting more and more anxious and more stressed, go for a walk, take a stretch, breathe with awareness, concentrate on your breath. And I've talked about journaling a lot before, so I'm not going to go on about this one, but sometimes doing some quick prompts about what it is that's bothering you and how you can help yourself in that moment, that's really helpful just to reflect on that. And you should always be guided by what your intention is for that day. So, for example, for me today, it might be to be present. So just be mindful of these things. These things can really, really help you in your day to day. And the biggest one for me is breathing. I never thought that my breath could be so powerful, but it really is. It's the most powerful tool you have. So utilize it, use it as much as you can. I mentioned consistency earlier on and how that's been a game changer for me. I think that a lot of people can often think that motivation is what you need to be successful or to be aligned or whatever it is. But you don't actually need motivation. It's consistency that you need, because motivation comes and goes. You can't rely on it. But consistency is what is the thing that actually creates change. So if you're only doing things when you feel like it because you're motivated, you're never going to build that resilience. I mean, it's quite obvious, really. So resilience is about choosing to act and doing something even when you're not in the mood. There's been so many times where I thought, and of course you can resonate with this, so many times that I thought, it's cold outside, it's raining, I do not want to get out of bed. But I hate having those kind of conversations with myself because that's unhelpful. I mean, where is this going to get me? So it doesn't actually matter to me what my thoughts are in the morning about what I don't want to do. It doesn't matter. I completely ignore myself. And I know that we live now in a society where it's all about taking note of your emotions and, giving yourself what you need. And that is true. I'm not saying don't do that, but I think that we need to stop giving motivation and our feelings and our emotions so much power. Be consistent. Get up even if you don't want to. Do that thing even if you don't want to, because, motivation comes and goes, but, once you've done the thing that you didn't want to do, you'll ask yourself, well, what was my problem? I've done it now and I actually feel seriously accomplished, and it wasn't even that bad to begin with. Like, just do the thing and be consistent. Take time to take care of yourself, of course, but do the thing that you said that you were going to do. Be consistent with yourself. It builds so much self-trust. It really does. There's a book by Susan Jeffers called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I wanted to mention this book because it's all about overcoming fear and the excuses that we make. And we all do this. I'm guilty of this as well. I make a lot of excuses for myself, but I've I've built enough awareness now to know when I'm bullshitting myself and how to catch it and to turn it around. So in this book, Susan Jeffers, she teaches that avoiding action makes us feel small. And when you act despite fear, you're taking back your power. And I think this is really, really huge because, of course, we want to feel powerful, not small. So, why would you avoid that action if you know how much of a detrimental effect it's having? Why would you do that to yourself? So, I'm really contemplating this myself as I'm talking to you about it, because I think I've done this so many times in my life where I'm just like, I'm too scared to do this, so I'm not going to do this. But it made me feel smaller and smaller and smaller. And I got to a stage where I was just like, I can't keep feeling this small. I just know that I have a potential, and I'm not putting it out there. And why am I not putting it out there? So only lately I've been trying to take back my power, and this is where this podcast has been born. So from Susan Jeffers' quote, she says, pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. And I think that's what I was trying to explain just now, but Susan has done it way better than I could have. I felt so scared of doing that thing and living the life that I wanted to live and putting in the action to live that life. But it got to a stage where feeling small and feeling powerful, just the fear of that just got so overwhelming and so much worse that I had to take action, regardless of if I knew how or what my next steps were going to be. So I just love this conversation because, like I said, I mean, awareness is just the beginning. Now it's time to take that action. Of course, take care of yourself and look after yourself. Take those small steps, take it easy. But this is proven stuff to work. This is, everybody who has made changes in their life and has had a transformation will say that consistent action is what has brought them to that place. I mean, if you think of the metaphor of climbing a mountain, so every step may feel really small and, some steps may be harder than others. But when you reach the top, you always realize that every single step to the top, to that view, to feeling accomplishment, it all mattered and it was all part of the journey. So it's just so important to keep taking those steps and not focusing on the top of the mountain, reaching the top of the mountain. Just keep taking those consistent steps. You're going to reach the peak at some point. And I often say this about myself lately. This is how I've been motivating myself and getting myself to be consistent in my action. I keep telling myself, keep knocking. One of the doors are going to open at some stage. And this could take me a week or a month or a year, but I don't focus on that. I don't focus on the timeline. I just keep knocking, and in my mind, the door is going to open at some stage. And this is the confidence that we should be taking our consistent actions with. So guys, I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you today, and I've been so excited. I hope you can hear that. Like, I've been really fully channeling this and been so immersed in this conversation because it's what excites me the most, because it's what's helped me the most to be consistent, to make those small changes and to build my own resilience. And I want to be able to encourage you all to be able to take that action from today's episode. So please, give yourself that chance. Be consistent for a week and let me know how you get on. Maybe choose one thing, maybe consistency with meditation, maybe consistency with exercise, whatever it is that you're trying to work on. Give yourself some small goals. Don't do big goals. Start small and take those consistent actions, and then watch how much trust you build in yourself. So remember, guys, look, consistency is, you deserve to be consistent, and you deserve to be making those changes, however small, however big, and you are worthy of this. So let me know how you get on in making those changes and in your consistent actions. And until next time, remember, your resilience is your superpower.